I found my husband in our living room with our son's fiancée just hours before the wedding. I was about to confront him, but a movement in the hallway stopped me. It was my son Garrett, his face a mask of stone. He looked at me and whispered, "Mom, I already know, and it's worse than you think." This isn't just a story about a wedding that went catastrophically wrong. It's about the day my entire world, the one I'd built for 25 years, shattered into a million pieces, revealing a betrayal so deep it still makes my blood run cold. But what emerged from that wreckage, from the ashes of my perfect life, was something far more real and powerful than I ever imagined. The morning of my son Garrett's wedding, I was up at 5 a.m., pacing. I told myself it was just nerves, the kind any mother feels on such a momentous day. But deep down, a quiet unease had been gnawing at me for months. My husband, Arthur, was the charmer, the life of every party. I was the rock, the planner, the one who kept our small accounting business running and made sure every bill was paid, every birthday remembered. For a long time, that was enough. But lately, a chilling distance had crept between us. He'd stop talking when I walked into a room. His phone was always angled away. When I'd ask what was wrong, he'd just laugh it off, blaming work stress and a big promotion. I chose to believe him. What else could I do? You don't just throw away 25 years over a feeling. The soft click of my office door brought me back to the present. It was Garrett, my son, standing there in his pajamas, coffee mug in hand. At 23, he had my practical mind, but his father's handsome looks. But today, he looked utterly exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. "Mom, you've been up for hours," he murmured. "The wedding isn't until 4. I tried for a cheerful smile. "Just want everything to be perfect for my boy." He then hit me with a bombshell. "Dad left early," he said, an odd note in his voice. Something about picking up a gift for Brenda's parents. I frowned. That was news to me. Then Garrett sat on my desk, looking much younger than his years. "Mom," he began, "can I ask you something?" My chair swiveled to face him fully. His worry was stark in the desk lamp's harsh light. "Do you think Brenda really loves me?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Brenda, his fiancée, was ambitious, beautiful, from old money. On the surface, she was everything we'd wanted for Garrett. But I'd had my own secret doubts. The way her eyes would glaze over when Garrett talked, the way she'd check her phone at dinner. "Why would you ask that, honey? It's your wedding day." I tried to reassure him, but he mumbled, "Sometimes, when she looks at me, it feels like she's looking right through me. Like I'm just a box she needs to check off." He paused, then dropped the real bomb. "And lately, she's been spending so much time with Dad. They're always talking about finances. She says he's mentoring her." My stomach clenched. I wanted to tell him about the things I'd noticed too, the way Arthur's eyes followed Brenda, how he always found excuses to help her, how he knew her exact coffee order without ever asking. Instead, I just squeezed his hand. "Wedding jitters are normal, honey." But Garrett shook his head, his voice cracking. "It's not just jitters, Mom." His eyes, filled with terrifying pain, met mine. "I think she's in love with someone else." My blood turned to ice. "What makes you say that?" I whispered. "Little things," he choked out. "The way she lights up when Dad calls. How she always asks about him first. Yesterday, I saw them in the garden, and the way he looked at her, it wasn't how a father-in-law should look at his son's fiancée." A hot flash crawled up my neck. "Garrett, that's a very serious accusation." "I know," he said, his shoulders slumping. "And I hope I'm wrong. God, I hope I'm wrong." Before I could answer, Arthur strode in, looking immaculate. "There are my 2 favorite people," he boomed, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. He seemed surprised to see Garrett. "Big day, son. You should be getting ready." Then he turned to me. "Lorraine, you'll exhaust yourself. Brenda just called. She's stopping by around 10 to discuss seating chart details." Garrett's expression tightened. "What details?" "Oh, Arthur waved a dismissive hand, "just making sure her parents aren't next to Uncle Robert after that political argument last Christmas. We should probably discuss it privately. Politics and all that." "Of course," Garrett said, his voice flat. "Can't have the wrong people sitting together." The tension was suffocating. Watching my husband and my son, I knew deep in my gut, Garrett wasn't wrong. Something was terribly, horribly wrong. After they left my office, a cold dread settled over me. I was supposed to have a caterer call at 10:30, a call I'd planned for weeks. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling slightly, and lied. I told them I had a family emergency. The truth was, I had cleared my morning. I couldn't shake Garrett's words, or the sick feeling Arthur's fake cheerfulness had given me. Something was happening in my house today. And for the first time in 25 years, I intended to find out what. I spent the next 2 hours pretending to be busy, tidying an already spotless kitchen, rearranging flowers. Every sound made me jump, every passing car made my heart hammer. It felt like I was an actress in a play, going through the motions of being the happy mother of the groom, while inside, my insides were twisting with anxiety. At exactly 10 o'clock, Brenda's sleek white BMW pulled into the driveway. I watched from the kitchen window as she walked to the front door with the easy confidence of someone who belonged. My heart pounded. I slipped out the back door and crept around the side of the house, crouching behind the large hydrangeas that lined our living room windows. I felt ridiculous, a spy in my own home, but the need to know, to confirm or deny my fears, was overwhelming. Through the bay window, I saw them. Arthur had let her in. They stood by the fireplace, our family photo spot. He handed her a drink. I couldn't hear their words, but their body language screamed. They were too close. His hand lingered on the small of her back, a casual gesture, easily explained, but it stayed just a second too long. My hands clenched, nails digging into my palms. 25 years. We had built a life in this house. Read bedtime stories on that couch. Hosted countless holidays in that room. And now my husband was caressing another woman, our son's fiancée, on our son's wedding day. I was about to storm inside, to scream, to confront them right then. I didn't care about the scene, the wedding. Only the searing betrayal. But then I saw a movement upstairs, a shadow in the glass reflection. Garrett. He was standing at the top of the stairs, hidden, watching them too. The sight of him, so still and broken, stopped me cold. This wasn't just my pain. It was his. Downstairs, things escalated. Brenda's hand was now on Arthur's chest. She leaned into him, head tilted back, a smile playing on her lips. She said something, and he laughed. A sound I hadn't heard from him in years, light, genuine, happy. The way he used to laugh with me when we were young. In that moment, he transformed into someone I didn't recognize, someone alive in a way he hadn't been with me for a very, very long time. Then his hands were in her hair, and they were kissing. Not a quick peck. A deep, passionate kiss, the kind you see in movies. My vision went red. A roar filled my ears. I took a step, ready to tear the door off its hinges. Then a hand grabbed my arm. I spun around, heart in my throat. Garrett. He'd slipped out, come to find me. His face was ashen, but his eyes blazed with a cold, hard determination I'd never seen. "Mom, don't," he whispered, his voice tight. "Not yet. Garrett, this is," I choked on the words. "I know what it is," he said, steady, though his hands shook. "Mom, I've known for weeks." Weeks? The word was a strangled whisper. I stared at my son, the boy I'd raised, now looking at me with the eyes of a man who had seen too much. We were still crouched behind the hydrangeas, the beautiful flowers now a blind for our family's destruction. Inside, my husband and my son's fiancée had moved to the couch. I couldn't bear to look. "I didn't want to believe it," Garrett said, low and urgent. I made excuses. But it kept happening. The lingering looks, the private conversations, the way Mom, he corrected himself, a painful slip of the tongue, I mean, Brenda, lit up when he was around. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, trembling with shock and a fierce, protective anger. He shouldn't have had to carry this alone. "Because I needed proof," he said, jaw tight. And because, he looked at me, eyes far older than 23, I wanted to give them enough rope to hang themselves. He pulled out his phone, hands shaking slightly. "I hired someone," he confessed. "You what?" "I'm not stupid, Mom." After I saw them having lunch a month ago, a lunch Dad called a business meeting, and she called a shopping trip, I knew I wasn't crazy. I needed the truth. He handed me the phone. I hired an investigator. My breath hitched. An investigator? Garrett? The money. Don't worry about the money, he said grimly. It was worth every penny. The first photo showed Arthur and Brenda entering the Riverside Hotel downtown 3 weeks ago, then leaving 2 hours later, looking flushed. There are 17 different occasions, Garrett said quietly as I scrolled through a gallery of betrayal. Dimly lit restaurants, private parking garages, pressed against Arthur's car, laughing, holding hands. My stomach churned. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated, long-term affair. I started to stand again, a fresh wave of rage washing over me. We're going to stop this. Right now. No. Garrett's voice was sharp, pulling me back down. Mom, trust me. I have a plan. A plan? Garrett, this is insane. We can't just let the wedding. We absolutely can, he interrupted, with an authority I'd never heard. And we will. Mom, think about it. If we confront them now, they'll deny it. Twist it. Dad will say you're hysterical, misinterpreting. Brenda will cry and play the victim. They'll turn it all around on us. He was right. I could already hear Arthur's smooth, placating voice. So, what are you suggesting? I whispered, my anger giving way to a cold, terrifying clarity. Garrett's smile was a chilling, unfamiliar thing. Public humiliation, he said. Complete and total destruction of their reputations. Legal consequences. We don't just end this, Mom. We make sure they can never do this to anyone again. I stared at my son. When had he become so calculating, so ruthless? Then I looked back through the window. My husband, the man I had loved and trusted for a quarter century, was unbuttoning Brenda's blouse on the couch where we had built our family. And in that moment, I knew. The woman I used to be, the forgiving, understanding wife, was gone. She had died right there, in the dirt behind the flowers she had so carefully planted. Tell me the plan, I said. That evening was one of the strangest of my life. Arthur came home acting like nothing had happened. He talked about his speech for the reception, about how proud he was of Garrett. The hypocrisy was so thick I could barely breathe. I just nodded and smiled, a hollow shell of myself, while inside I was screaming. After Arthur went to bed, Garrett and I met in my office. The door was locked, the blinds drawn. It felt like a war room. Spread across my desk were the beginnings of an evidence file that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. Talk to me about this investigator, I said, studying a surveillance photo that made my stomach churn. Her name is Beverly, Garrett said. Beverly Reed. The name hit me like a splash of cold water. Beverly. My sister Beverly. Garrett nodded. I didn't know who else to call. I knew she was a cop for 20 years before she retired and started her own PI business. I knew she was smart, and I knew she'd be discreet. He looked a little sheepish. I also knew she never really liked Dad. I let out a short, sharp laugh that sounded more like a sob. My younger sister Beverly. We were close, but I hadn't told her about the growing distance with Arthur. I'd been too proud, too ashamed to admit my marriage was failing. I called her, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Beverly picked up on the second ring. Lorraine, it's past midnight. Is everything okay? No, Bev. Nothing is okay. And then the dam broke. I told her everything, what Garrett had suspected, what we'd seen that morning, the photos. I cried ugly, gasping sobs for the first time all day. She listened patiently, her voice calm and steady. There was no shock, no surprise, just grim acceptance. I'm not surprised, Lori, she said softly when I was finished. I've seen the way he looks at that girl. I was hoping I was wrong. Garrett told me about the photos, I said, wiping my eyes. What else do you have? More than you want to know, probably, she said, her voice turning professional. I've been tracking their movements for 3 weeks. They meet twice a week, regular as clockwork, at the Riverside Hotel. He pays in cash always. They have lunch at fancy restaurants he'd never take you to. Last week, he took her to Tiffany and Company. That hot flash of rage again. Our money. The money I managed so carefully for our retirement, our future. And Lori, Beverly's voice was gentle. There's more. Something bigger. I've been looking into Arthur's finances, trying to figure out where all this cash for hotel rooms and gifts is coming from. He's been sloppy. What did you find? I asked, dreading the answer. A long pause. It's not just Brenda, she said, her voice heavy. This isn't the first time. I found a series of regular monthly payments going back 15 years, always to the same person, a woman named Victoria Sterling. The name meant nothing. Who is that? I did some digging. She was a junior associate at his old firm back when Garrett was a kid. She left abruptly about 15 years ago. The payments started a few months after she left. Beverly took a deep breath. Lorraine, she has a daughter. A 15-year-old girl named Haley. I ran a background check. The father isn't listed on the birth certificate, but I'd bet my license that Arthur is her father. The phone felt heavy. I couldn't breathe. A daughter. A whole other child. 15 years of lies. 15 years of a double life. The secret trips, the unexplained expenses, the emotional distance, it all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. I have to know for sure, Bev, I whispered. I know, she said. I'll handle it. But Lorraine, you need to be prepared. When this comes out, it's going to be a nuclear bomb. I know, I said, my voice cold and hard. That's exactly what we're counting on. The 24 hours leading up to the wedding were a blur of calculated deception. I moved through the preparations like a ghost, my body on autopilot while my mind raced. I smiled at relatives, approved seating charts, even helped Arthur with his tie. My fingers brushing against the silk while I imagined tightening it around his neck. Every interaction was a performance. Every polite word was a lie. Beverly worked quickly. She was a professional, and this was now personal. She told me she had a contact at a private lab. It's a long shot, Lori, but if we can get a clean DNA sample from Arthur, we can get a preliminary non-legal comparison against a sample from the girl. That night, after Arthur was asleep, snoring softly beside me, I crept out of the room. My heart pounded with every creak of the floorboards. I went into the bathroom and took his toothbrush from its holder. My hand shook so much I almost dropped it. It felt like the ultimate violation. But what was this compared to the violations he had committed against me, against our family? I placed it carefully in a plastic bag and left it in the mailbox for Beverly to pick up before dawn. The next day, while the house buzzed with florists and photographers, Beverly called. I've got more on the money, she said, her voice grim. It's worse than we thought. We met in my car, parked down the street, the only place I felt safe to talk. She opened a laptop. On the screen was a spreadsheet. I did a full workup on your joint accounts, your retirement funds, everything, she said, pointing to a highlighted column. Look at the pattern. For years, Arthur has been making regular cash withdrawals. Small amounts, never more than 1,000, always from different branches. I thought that was for his hobby, I said numbly. He always told me he was investing in rare coins. Another lie, Beverly said dryly. His hobby was named Brenda. He used the cash for the hotel rooms, the expensive dinners, the gifts. That Tiffany's necklace? He paid for half of it in cash. But that's not the worst part. She clicked another tab. He's been borrowing against your 401k. I stared at the screen. Black and white. A series of loans against the retirement account I had so diligently contributed to from my small business. Our safety net. He had drained nearly $60,000 from it over the past 18 months. How? I whispered. He would have needed my signature. He forged it, Beverly said quietly. It's a good forgery, but it's not yours. A wave of nausea. This went beyond cheating. This was theft. He wasn't just breaking my heart. He was systematically dismantling our future, piece by piece, to fund his sordid affair. He was stealing from me, from the college fund we built, from the life we were supposed to share. He was gambling with my entire future. And Brenda? I asked, my voice barely audible. She's no innocent victim, Beverly said, her eyes hard. I'll get to her. But first, there's something else. She hesitated, then handed me a manila envelope. The preliminary DNA results came back this morning. My hands shook as I opened it. I scanned the page, the scientific jargon blurring, until I found the conclusion: probability of paternity 99.999%. I stared at the words until they burned into my memory. Haley Sterling was Arthur's daughter. 15 years. 15 years of loving him, trusting him, building a life with him while he had another child, another family, hidden in the shadows. I leaned my head against the steering wheel. No tears came. I was beyond them. A strange, terrifying calm settled over me. Grief was still there, a massive gaping wound, but now it was accompanied by something else, a cold, hard resolve. He wasn't just going to lose his wife. He was going to lose everything. What about Brenda? I asked, needing to latch onto a target for the rage beginning to thaw the ice in my veins. You said there was more about her. Beverly nodded, her expression hardening again. Right, Brenda. Let's talk about the fiancé. She opened a new file on her laptop. She's not just sleeping with your husband. She's been embezzling from her law firm. What? She's a junior partner at a small but prestigious firm downtown, Beverly explained, pulling up internal financial reports. She's been padding expense reports, creating fake invoices for non-existent consultants, funneling the money into a private bank account. It's not huge amounts, but it's consistent. Over the past year, she's stolen over 200,000 MYJAWDROPPED. 200,000. My jaw dropped. 200,000? And I can trace some of that money directly back to gifts for Arthur, Beverly said, showing me a wire transfer, then a credit card statement for a $1,000 watch. She was stealing from her partners to buy gifts for her lover, who was stealing from his wife to buy gifts for her. It's the most disgustingly perfect circle of deceit I've ever seen. So Brenda wasn't just a homewrecker. She was a criminal, a thief, and she was about to marry my son, bringing her corruption into the heart of what was left of my family. The numbness was gone, replaced by a white-hot fury. This wasn't just about a broken heart anymore. This was about protecting my son. This was about justice. This was about making sure these two people faced the consequences for every single lie, every single dollar, every single broken promise. Okay, I said, looking my sister in the eye. The plan for the wedding. Let's go over it one more time. I want it to be perfect. The knowledge of Brenda's embezzlement added a dark, criminal layer to the already staggering betrayal. This was no longer just a messy domestic drama. It was a conspiracy of fraud and theft. How did you get all this? I asked Beverly. Brenda's not as smart as she thinks, Beverly said with grim satisfaction. She got sloppy. And I have friends in law enforcement willing to pull strings. A friend in the fraud division took one look at these patterns and knew exactly what he was seeing. She was moving money through a shell corporation under her mother's maiden name. Amateur hour. I thought about Brenda's parents, pillars of the community. They had no idea their golden child was a thief and that the stable family she was marrying into was a house of cards built on lies. The public humiliation was going to destroy them too. For a fleeting moment, I felt pity, then it was extinguished by the fire of my own betrayal. So Arthur is stealing our retirement money to buy gifts for his mistress, I summarized, the words tasting like poison. And Brenda is stealing from her company to buy gifts for my husband, her lover, who is also her future father-in-law. I shook my head. You can't make this stuff up. It gets better, Beverly said, a grim twist to her lips. Some of the money Arthur took from your 401k? He invested it in a real estate deal that Brenda recommended. Let me guess, I said, dripping with sarcasm. The deal was a bust. The deal never existed, Beverly confirmed. The money went straight into that secret account of hers. She was stealing from him too. He was so blinded by his own ego and infatuation he never even saw it. I had to laugh. A bitter, joyless sound. My brilliant, charming husband, who always thought he was the smartest person in the room, was being played for a fool by a 20-something embezzler. It was almost poetic. We spent another hour going over the evidence. Bank statements, surveillance photos, hotel receipts, wire transfers, forged loan documents, and now a complete file on Brenda's criminal activities, ready for the district attorney. And, of course, the DNA report, the smoking gun. I looked at the file, the neat tabs and organized pages that represented the complete demolition of my life. 25 years reduced to a stack of incriminating documents. Suddenly, a wave of profound exhaustion washed over me. "Bev, can we do this?" I whispered. "Can we really stand up in front of 300 people and do this?" "To our family." Beverly reached over, her grip firm. "Lori, listen to me. What choice do you have? If you confront them privately, they will lie, manipulate you, turn Garrett against you. They'll deny until you think you're crazy. I've seen it 100 times." She was right. "This way," she continued, "there is no escape. No room for lies. Only the truth, presented in front of everyone they've ever tried to impress. It's not just about revenge, Lori. It's about consequences. Brenda needs to go to jail. Arthur needs to be held accountable, not just for the affairs, but for the financial fraud he's committed against you. This is the only way to make sure the lies stop for good." I took a deep breath, the stale car air filling my lungs. I thought of Garrett, his pale, determined face. I thought of Haley, the daughter I never knew. I thought of the 25 years I had given to a man who had been lying to me from the very beginning. "You're right," I said, my voice clear and steady again. "It's the only way." I started the car. "Let's go. We have a wedding to prepare for." The final hours before the wedding were the most surreal of my life. I went back into the house and resumed my role as the calm, happy mother of the groom. I felt a strange sense of detachment, like watching a movie of my own life. I saw myself laughing with cousins, complimenting my sister-in-law, reassuring the caterer. Inside, I was a coiled spring of tension and grief. Outside, I was the picture of maternal pride. Arthur was in his element, working the crowd, accepting congratulations with a broad, confident smile. He pulled me aside at one point, his arm around my waist. "You look beautiful, Lorraine," he murmured. "Isn't this a perfect day?" I looked up at him, into the eyes of the man I had loved for more than half my life, and felt nothing but a cold, empty void. "Perfect," I said. Garrett mirrored my forced composure. He greeted friends, posed for photos, played his part flawlessly. But whenever his eyes met mine across the crowded lawn, I saw the same steel resolve. We were in this together. Soldiers waiting for the signal. The plan was simple, rehearsed until we knew it by heart. Beverly had arrived early, disguised as catering staff, her professional audiovisual equipment hidden in plain sight, connected to the large projection screen supposedly for a sentimental photo slideshow of Garrett growing up. No one suspected a thing. She had a small remote in her pocket. When the time came, one button. My own role? I had prepared the divorce papers with my lawyer a week ago, a secret even from Garrett. Signed, notarized, sitting in a sealed envelope in my purse. I also had a USB drive with copies of every piece of evidence. One way or another, my marriage would officially end today. There was no going back. At 5 minutes to 4, I took my seat in the front row. The string quartet began to play. Arthur sat beside me, squeezing my hand with what looked like genuine affection. I felt a tremor of revulsion. Brenda appeared at the end of the aisle, a vision in white lace. Radiant, beautiful, utterly fraudulent. She beamed at the crowd, then her eyes found Arthur. For a split second, a look passed between them. Shared secrets. Triumphant conspiracy. They thought they had won. Garrett stood at the altar, an unreadable mask on his face. As Brenda joined him, he took her hand, his expression unwavering. He looked out at the crowd, his eyes scanning until they landed on me. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was time. The minister began the ceremony. The irony was suffocating. I wondered if Arthur and Brenda were even listening or planning their next secret rendezvous. They exchanged vows they didn't mean, promises they had already broken 100 times. My stomach churned with every lie. Finally, the minister reached the critical moment. He smiled benevolently. "If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." A hush fell over the 300 guests. This was it. My heart hammered against my ribs. I could feel the eyes of everyone on us. I took a slow, deliberate breath. Then I stood up. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. The air, which had been filled with gentle music and warm breeze, became thick and silent. Every head turned. Arthur, beside me, went rigid. "Lorraine, what are you doing?" he hissed, grabbing my arm. "Sit down. You're making a scene." I shook his hand off like it was a venomous snake. My eyes locked onto Garrett, pale but resolute. He knew this was coming. Then I looked at Brenda, her radiant smile frozen into a mask of confused horror. "I'm sorry, everyone," I said, my voice clear and surprisingly steady, carrying across the silent lawn. "I apologize for the interruption, but I believe the minister asked if there was any reason why this marriage should not proceed." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "And I do. I have a reason." A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. I saw Brenda's father, Judge Holloway, starting to rise, thunderous indignation on his face. "Mrs. Carter, what is the meaning of this?" he boomed. "The meaning, Judge Holloway," I said, turning to him, "is that your daughter is about to marry my son under false pretenses. And I think you and everyone else gathered here today deserves to know the truth." I pulled the small remote from my purse, the one Beverly had given me. My thumb hovered over the red button. "The truth?" Arthur sputtered, his face blotchy red. "Lorraine, have you lost your mind? You are embarrassing our son." "No, Arthur," I said, my gaze back on him, my voice dropping to an icy calm. "You are the one who has embarrassed our son. You and your mistress." With that, I pressed the button. Behind the altar, the large screen, meant for Garrett's baby pictures, flickered to life. The first image was a crystal-clear surveillance photo of Arthur and Brenda locked in that passionate kiss in our living room, the one Garrett and I had witnessed just the day before. The crowd erupted. Shrieks, shouts, people standing to get a better look. I saw Brenda's mother clutch her chest, her face ashen. "But that's not all," I continued, my voice somehow carrying over the chaos. "You see, this wasn't just a one-time mistake. This has been going on for months." The screen changed. Arthur and Brenda entering the Riverside Hotel, timestamp visible. Then another and another. A collage of their secret meetings, their clandestine lunches, their lies laid bare for all to see. Brenda stammered, trying to deny it, but her voice was lost in the uproar. Arthur was on his feet, shouting, "This is fake. Photoshopped. Lorraine is having a breakdown." "Am I, Arthur?" I asked calmly. "Then perhaps you can explain this." The screen changed again. Bank statements. My finger, in a close-up photo, pointed to the suspicious cash withdrawals. The forged signatures on the 401k loan documents. The receipt from Tiffany & Company for a $15,000 necklace flashed, followed by a photo of Brenda wearing that very necklace at her bridal shower. The noise from the crowd began to die down, replaced by a stunned, horrified silence. This was no longer just a cheating scandal. This was something darker. "My husband has been systematically stealing from our family's retirement savings to finance his affair," I announced. "And his fiancée, the woman about to marry my son, has been busy as well." The next slide showed the evidence of Brenda's embezzlement from her law firm, fake invoices, wire transfers. I could see her partners in the fourth row, their faces turning from confusion to pure fury. And then I delivered the final, devastating blow. "But the best part," I said, my voice turning to ice, "the real heart of the deception that has defined my marriage, is that my husband's lies didn't start with Brenda." The DNA test results filled the screen. The words "probability of paternity 99.999%" displayed in huge, bold letters. Below it, a photo of a pretty, smiling 15-year-old girl. "This is Haley Sterling," I said, my voice shaking with 15 years of repressed pain. "She is Arthur's daughter, a daughter he has kept hidden from me and from his own son for her entire life." The silence that followed was absolute. 300 people, staring at the evidence of a betrayal so complete, so devastating that even the most seasoned gossips were rendered speechless. And in that perfect, terrible silence, I watched the world I had known for 25 years burn to the ground. The silence was broken by a single, sharp sob. It came from Brenda, who swayed on her feet, her face a ghastly white against the pure white of her wedding dress. Then she crumpled to the ground in a heap of lace and shattered dreams. That single sound broke the spell. The backyard erupted into chaos. People were shouting, pointing, pulling out their phones to record the disaster. Brenda's mother rushed forward to her fallen daughter, while her father, the judge, just stood there, a mask of disbelief and utter humiliation. Arthur was frozen for a moment, his face a kaleidoscope of rage, panic, and dawning horror. He looked from the screen, to me, to the stunned faces of his friends and colleagues. He was trapped. No lies, no smooth words could get him out of this. His carefully constructed world had been publicly and irrevocably demolished. Then he did the only thing a coward could do. He ran. He bolted, pushing through the stunned crowd, knocking over a rack of champagne glasses as he scrambled towards the parking area. He was actually trying to flee the scene of his own life's implosion. But Beverly was waiting for him. My sister, still in her catering uniform, stepped out from behind a large oak tree. She was a small woman, but she moved with the confidence of a seasoned cop. As Arthur barreled past, she stuck out her foot. It was a perfectly executed trip. Arthur went down hard, hitting the manicured lawn and skidding a few feet in his expensive wedding suit. "Going somewhere, Arthur?" Beverly asked mildly, strolling over to where he lay sprawled and gasping. By now, Garrett had left the altar and was by my side, a steadying arm around me. Brenda was back on her feet, supported by her weeping mother, and she was pointing a shaking finger at me. You planned this," she shrieked, her voice raw with hysteria. "You planned this whole thing to ruin my life." "No, Brenda," Garrett said, his voice cold and clear, cutting through her hysterics. "You ruined your own life. You and him." He gestured towards his father, who was now being helped to his feet by Beverly. "Let me go," Arthur demanded, trying to pull his arm from my sister's firm grasp. "Can't do that, Artie," Beverly said, using a childhood nickname that made him flinch. "You see, I'm a licensed private investigator, and I have reason to believe you've committed multiple felonies, including financial fraud. But don't worry, we're not here to talk about you right now." She looked over his shoulder. Two uniformed police officers were walking calmly through the parting crowd. They weren't here for Arthur's fraud. That would be a civil matter for my lawyer. They were here for Brenda. "Brenda Holloway," one of the officers asked, his voice calm but authoritative. Brenda's eyes widened in terror. "No," she whispered. "You're under arrest for suspicion of embezzlement and wire fraud," the officer continued as his partner took her arms and smoothly clicked handcuffs onto her wrists. The sound of the handcuffs snapping shut was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I watched Brenda's face crumble as she realized this wasn't just public humiliation. This wasn't just a canceled wedding. This was real. There were going to be real legal consequences. Her life, as she knew it, was over. As the police led a sobbing Brenda away, her parents watched in stunned horror. The photographers, hired to capture a fairy tale, were now capturing the downfall of a prominent family, their flashes popping relentlessly. The crowd started to disperse, some leaving quickly, others lingering, whispering in shocked huddles, their phones still up, recording everything. In the midst of the chaos, I finally felt the strength leave my legs. Garrett held me up. "It's over, Mom," he whispered. "It's finally over." I looked around at the wreckage of the perfect day I had planned. It was a disaster. A nightmare. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. The 3 hours that followed the explosion were a blur of flashing blue lights, hushed conversations, and the slow, painful process of dismantling a wedding that never was. The police took our statements. Brenda was taken away in a squad car, her beautiful wedding dress looking absurd and tragic under the harsh glare of the setting sun. Arthur, after being questioned and released, simply disappeared. He got in his car and drove away without a word to me or to his son. Most of the guests had left, though a few close family members and friends remained, moving through the debris of the reception like ghosts, helping the shocked catering staff clear away the uneaten food and untouched champagne. My sister Beverly stayed, a quiet, solid presence at my side. I finally found Garrett in the kitchen. He was still in his tuxedo, calmly eating a sandwich as if he'd just attended someone else's wedding instead of orchestrating the public destruction of his own. "How are you feeling?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Relieved," he said without a moment's hesitation. He took a bite of his sandwich. "For the first time in months, Mom, I feel like I can breathe." He looked at me, a flicker of the old warmth returning to his eyes. "How are you?" "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "I think I'm just numb." The next few weeks were a painful and messy ordeal. The story predictably became a local media sensation. Wedding day scandal, fiancé arrested at altar, groom's father implicated in decades of deceit. Our names and faces were everywhere. I stopped answering the phone, stopped leaving the house unless I absolutely had to. My little accounting business suffered. A few long-term clients quietly took their business elsewhere, uncomfortable with the notoriety. The day after the wedding, I did exactly what I had planned. I walked into my lawyer's office, my purse containing the signed divorce papers and the USB drive of evidence, and I filed. With the mountains of proof we had, Arthur didn't even try to fight it. The legal process was swift and brutal. In the settlement, I got the house and a significant portion of his remaining assets as compensation for the fraud he'd committed against our retirement funds. It wasn't a victory. It was restitution. Brenda, facing overwhelming evidence, took a plea deal. She was sentenced to 2 years in a low-security prison and ordered to pay back every penny she had stolen. Her family's reputation was left in tatters. Arthur's downfall was quieter, but no less complete. He lost his job, his reputation, and the respect of everyone he knew. He moved into a small apartment across town and, from what I heard, rarely showed his face in public. But the most complicated part of the aftermath was Haley. 2 weeks after the wedding, I received a letter. It was from Victoria Sterling, Haley's mother. It was short and to the point. She apologized for the pain her past relationship with Arthur had caused and said that her daughter Haley had learned the truth from the news reports and wanted to meet Garrett and me. I sat with that letter for 3 days. What was I supposed to do? This girl was the living embodiment of my husband's greatest betrayal. But she was also an innocent. She hadn't asked for any of this. She was my son's sister. I showed the letter to Garrett. He read it, his face grim. "I want to meet her," he said immediately. "She's my sister, Mom. She deserves to know her family, or what's left of it." So, I made the call. We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop in a town halfway between ours. I was terrified. As we sat waiting for them, I kept twisting the napkin in my hands into a shredded mess. Then, they walked in. Victoria was a plain, tired-looking woman who seemed to carry the weight of her secrets in the slump of her shoulders. And behind her was Haley. The moment I saw her, my breath caught in my throat. Beverly was right. She had Arthur's eyes, the same dark, intelligent eyes that had first made me fall in love with him all those years ago. She looked scared and uncertain, clutching a book to her chest like a shield. And in that moment, looking at this innocent girl who was a victim in all of this, I knew my anger wasn't with her. It was with him. Always with him. That first meeting with Haley was awkward. Words felt clunky and inadequate. Garrett, bless his heart, did most of the talking. He asked her about school, about the book she was holding, about her life. He didn't ask about Arthur. He just treated her like a person, like a sister he was meeting for the first time. I mostly just watched, trying to reconcile the image of the shy, sweet girl with the monumental lie she represented. Slowly, tentatively, we started to build something new. We met for coffee again, then for lunch. Garrett and Haley started texting, discovering a shared love for old movies and spicy food. I found myself looking forward to seeing her, to hearing about her life. She was bright and funny and kind. She was an innocent soul caught in the wreckage caused by our parents. A year passed. Life settled into a new, unfamiliar rhythm. The divorce was finalized. The media storm died down, replaced by newer, fresher scandals. I poured my energy into rebuilding my business, and slowly my clients started to come back. I sold the big family house with its backyard full of ghosts and bought a smaller, more manageable townhouse for myself. It was quiet. It was peaceful. And it was mine. Garrett, after months of therapy to work through the trauma of the betrayal, was thriving. He'd quit his corporate job and gone back to school to pursue his real passion, landscape architecture. He was designing beautiful spaces, creating order and beauty out of dirt and stone. A fitting metaphor for what he was doing with his own life. He was dating a lovely young woman, a librarian who was kind and genuine and looked at him like he was the only person in the world. And Haley? Haley had become a part of our lives. She would come over for dinner every other Sunday. She and Garrett had developed a real sibling bond, teasing each other and talking for hours. I found myself feeling a fierce, protective love for her. She wasn't a symbol of betrayal anymore. She was just Haley, my son's sister, and in a strange way, a part of my family. One evening, about a year after the wedding that wasn't, I was sitting in the living room of my new home when the doorbell rang. It was Arthur. I hadn't seen him or spoken to him since the day he'd driven away from our ruined reception. He looked diminished, older, grayer, the confident swagger gone, replaced by a deep-seated weariness. He asked if he could come in. I hesitated, then stepped aside. He told me he was in therapy. He said he was trying to understand why he had done the things he had done. He apologized. He said he was sorry for the lies, for the betrayal, for the pain he had caused me, Garrett, and Haley. I listened, and I knew he meant it. But an apology couldn't erase 25 years of deception. I forgive you, Arthur, I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. Not for you, but for me. I can't carry that anger around anymore. It's too heavy. I looked him in the eye. But I will never trust you again. And we can never go back. He nodded, a flicker of tears in his eyes. I know, he whispered. And then he left. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, I found myself thinking about the woman I was a year ago, crouched in the dirt behind the hydrangeas. She was so broken, so lost. I wished I could go back and tell her that it would be okay. That the pain was not the end of the story. The family I had thought I had was a lie. It shattered into a million pieces on that sunny afternoon. But what we built in its place, Garrett, Haley, and me, was smaller, quieter, and imperfect. But it was honest. It was built not on comfortable lies, but on a difficult, painful, and ultimately liberating truth. We had lost everything. But in doing so, we had found something real. And for the first time in a very long time, that felt like enough.